Call this evening's meeting to order, and welcome board members, welcome public who are here tonight. Appreciate you coming on this cold January evening, and we're going to open as we always do with a word of prayer. Tonight we're going to ask Gary if he would offer a word of prayer.
Our gracious God, Heavenly Father, we come to you, Lord, in this evening hour. We thank Thee for the blessings of the season. Although it's snowing outside and cold, You provided the seasons for us to see Your handiwork in nature. We ask now that You may bless our meeting and the decisions we must make. We also bring before You those in our country that are suffering because of the fires in California, the floods in North Carolina and Florida. Many of these tragic events are happening. We are thankful that there was not more loss of life, but we also know that these people's families have been disrupted. And we pray, Lord, that to the next several days the fires may be contained and that there may be a time of healing and a time of rebuilding in the next months and years. We also bring before our own township. May You be with continue to be with our police department and our Ottawa County sheriffs, our fire department, our DPW. We continue to give them safety as You have in the past year. May You do so in the coming year. Give each one of them everything they stand in need of. Be with all of our employees, Lord. Guide and protect them. Be with the township, O Lord. We're thankful for the blessings we have seen, and we ask for continued blessings in the future. Be with our decisions tonight. May we give us discernment and wisdom. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. If you would rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Everybody's doing well.
I'll call the roll. Supervisor Waringa.
Present. Yep.
Clerk Kuiper. Treasurer DeWitt.
Here.
Trustee Grassman.
Yes.
Trustee Schwalm.
Yep.
Trustee Velding.
Yep.
And Trustee Kelly is absent with notice.
Great. We have a quorum. Thank you. Item number 5 on our agenda tonight, approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Support.
All right, any discussion among the board? Hearing none, all in favor of approving tonight's agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we have our agenda set. Item 6 are the communication letters and reports that have been received for information. Trust that all board members have reviewed those documents. Item 7 is our initial public comment period as we quickly jump into that here. So anyone here this evening who wishes to address an item on our agenda for the evening as published on our website and as also shown to you here on the screen, at least in part, you can pull it up on your phone or whatever other device you wish. But if you want to speak to any of those items, now is an opportunity to do so. As most of you, I think, know, at the end of the meeting, there will also be another public comment period where you can address either things that were brought up during the meeting, agenda items here, or anything you like. So, Mr. Plowman?
Pete Plowman, Georgetown, Precinct 13.
I want a point of order. We're asked for your name and your address. Precinct 13 does not tell me your address.
It says in the policies and procedures to list the address. It doesn't say street address. That's my political address. I reclaim my time.
And I will be honest, I don't know the policy word for word, so I'm going to defer on this for the moment. We can look it up after.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just asking.
I agree with Gary.
So we always ask for name and address.
Then change the rule.
Okay.
So anyway, there's an item on here that talks about our computer upgrade on the core of our network. I'm not sure if you know, but you can buy those items from Dell Direct, okay? You can probably save quite a bit of money because they do government pricing. The other side of the coin is I was looking at the configuration. There is some redundancy, but there is a central point of failure on the storage area network, which means all that disk storage where all our data resides, if we have something go wrong there, you can be in big trouble in that we don't have a disaster recovery program. We don't have tapes that I see. We don't have a second site that we're sending data to. So I think a disaster recovery program for the critical data for Georgetown. At the same time, we also are voting tonight on videotaping all public meetings. As I look through many of the subcommittee meetings, I see that, discussions take place on certain things. I could read them all off, from the Finance Committee to the services to the utilities. Public was present, comments were made. None of that stuff is ever transcribed. If you videotape that and just put it on YouTube, you just click on closed captioning and it's all right there. So I'm hoping that you will vote for it. Even though Jim in Finance in September, when it was voted on in the Finance Committee, you voted against it, and then it came to here and it was tabled. Thus, that's where we are today. We've heard from members of this particular board that, hey, we already have enough transparency. We don't need any more. And if people want to come and know about it, they need to come here and find out. Well, guess what? This is 21st century. People are busy paying for their taxes. A lot of these subcommittees meet in the morning at 8 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They have kids. And I don't know I think the question comes down to, is more transparency better or is less transparency better? I think that's the one you have to get through. So I'm hoping that you'll vote for videotaping every public meeting. It only makes sense. The time has come. And if I may, I remember reading your all-in for Georgetown, and you talked about integrity. We believe in honesty is the best policy. We believe transparency and accountability are critical. So without transparency, you really don't have accountability, do you? And we all know there are some things that have happened here that it's real difficult to get the information. So I hope you vote for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Sean Half, Winifred Street. I would also ask the trustees here to strongly consider voting yes for recording the subcommittee meetings. I think it's best always to err on the side of transparency just about every single time. I know maybe that as far as the amount of people that are watching the videos on YouTube and so forth or see the recordings in here may be low, but it only takes a spark of interest, something to happen where demand's going to be very high. And if we're already recording it, then we won't have to worry about dealing with it later on. If there's any discussions that go on in the subcommittee meetings, it's all there. There's no confusion as to what was said. It should all be recorded. Hopefully, I don't think it should cost us that much money. So again, I would just ask you to strongly support voting yes for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Welcome.
Good evening, Council. Donna Mooney, Georgetown. I just wanted to kind of piggyback off of what was already said. I also am for the transparency and the recording of the commission meetings. I agree. We need to put it all out there. Citizens, taxpayers need to be able to hear and see what's going on if they can't be there. And I can also attest that as one of your school board members, I voted for my own meetings to be streamed and videotaped as well for parents who cannot be there. So I do support that as one of your tax-paying citizens and as somebody also in office here locally who fought to have that done with my own meetings. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else at this time? Okay, we appreciate your input. We're going to close the initial public comment period. There will be, as I said, other opportunity later in the meeting. At this point, then we'll move on to item number 8, which is our consent agenda. Is there a motion among the board to approve tonight's consent agenda?
So moved.
Support. Okay, any comments from board members? Okay, hearing none. All in favor say aye. 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 Anyone opposed? Consent agenda is approved. Item 9 now is a hearing for appeal filed by Marcia, and I don't want to mess up your last name, so I'll allow you to say it for yourself. But Just for the benefit of those who are either watching this on video or otherwise here present in the room, this doesn't happen too often, but there's an opportunity here for a resident to appeal decision made within the township, and this is the context in which to hold that hearing, so to speak, and this is the board on which to sit to decide that. And tonight we do have our special counsel, Crystal Morgan, who assists us with legal matters on behalf of the township. And I guess I would say, Marcia, not to preempt you at all, but if there's anything in terms of protocol or procedure, we would appreciate, Ms. Morgan, if you could direct us in that respect so that we do things properly and in order.
Thank you. At this time, I would just to allow Ms. Kaufman to appeal, and then I'll come back before the board.
Okay. All right.
On a face make my first introduction. My name
Sorry,
is Marcia.
you need. I don't mean to be rude, but you have to address the board and you have to face the board. Yeah.
Well, I also want to have my identity known to the community.
Absolutely. With the microphone, they'll be able to
Okay.
hear you much better.
My name is Marcia Plafkin Hurwitz.
Jim, you have to make a motion?
Excuse me?
A motion to open?
Oh, my apologies. Bear with. So, motion to open this hearing
So
needs to
moved.
be made. All right. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Now our hearing is officially open. You have the
So my
floor.
name hasn't changed. It's still Marcia Plafkin Hurwitz. And I'm here because we have a conflict. And the conflict started related to, actually, there was an incident also with the library, and they're connected, but primarily with the senior center. There are three issues that occurred in rapid succession. And one was that I complained that a Christian cross had been installed in the senior center as a decoration. I'm Jewish. I think I've made that clear already. Maybe not to persons behind me, but certainly to this group. So that was one issue. Two was that I had made programming requests, and I felt that people were not open. I didn't connect the two dots. Now I connect them. And three is that I made an effort to be hired or considered to be hired as a vendor for programming based on my experience doing a lot of art programming through my company, which is called Art as Responsa, which I founded in California 30 years ago. And through that, I've done Hebrew text-based art programming and also things that are not based in Hebrew, but are based in art. So in my experience, the conflict is about anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish sentiment. And I think it's a difficult issue because most people jump to denial and say, oh, no, not me, but I disagree. And so to help us think about this a little more broadly, I brought a book. I'm going to read a paragraph by Rabbi Morris, excuse me, Lazaron. And, excuse me. This was written in 1938. He started writing after the Nuremberg laws in Nazi Germany, which began stripping rights from a lot of people, starting with anyone who wasn't like the power brokers, and then it moved on to the Jews. It didn't start with Jews, but we certainly ended up with that. And his work has a lot to do with interfaith understanding, and as part of that, he's very blunt in his confrontation of anti-Semitism and who has the duty to address it. So I'll read from him. There are many things that our Christian friends will learn about us in the coming years, as we shall learn much about them. But the first lesson which my people must learn is to get an objective picture of themselves. A wise leader of American Jewry, even at the sacrifice of personal popularity, must think straight and talk plain. We Jews must not yield to the natural temptation to indulge an unctuous feeling of self-righteousness just because we are the victims of malevolent hate. Of course, men lie about us, vilify us, traduce us. Of course, the greater abuse and wrong are on the other side. Of course, anti-Semitism is primarily a Christian problem. But because we are wronged is no reason why we should bury our heads in the sand. Let us examine bravely our exposed positions. And I have to say, I felt like burying my head in the sand because I don't want to be here, and I resent that I have to be here in order to defend my rights as an American, as a woman who was born in Michigan, in Grand Rapids, and who someone now lives here and is a property owner. I think the issues I provided, I hope everyone will acknowledge that they received from me an email today. Okay.
Yes, yep,
I
we have
did-
received it.
I did this so that you could have the American court cases related to the issue of the Establishment Clause, the First Amendment, which I hold near and dear to my heart. And anything good that I've experienced in America is because of this First Amendment, this clause. So I think that what happened I think that you're issuing the no trespass is itself a violation, because it's in retaliation for my exercising my right, which is to object to a Christian cross in a public venue. My understanding is that the senior center, just like this building we're standing in, is a public venue paid for with public tax dollars, not private dollars, the public, which means everyone has a say on what occurs within the context of that building and on that property. I'm not going to read each case. I'll cite what I think is on the second page. I think I listed, let me make sure, I listed 7 or 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 5 cases which address this issue. And I think the case of Allegheny versus ACLU, the reason I'll highlight this case is it has to do with coercion and how every one of us is free, has the freedom not to be coerced. And I think for the dominant group, it's really hard to understand coercion. I think when you've grown up as Christian and this world is Christian and there's Christmas trees everywhere and there's crosses everywhere and everyone says, even in this building, even in this group, you end your prayer. The reason I stepped out is you end it in a way that I can't participate because it violates my religion. I won't get too detailed about it, but it would be a problem for me to pray the way you pray. Now, you can impose that on me by running a public meeting where you pray that way. And you can say, we don't care because she's just one person and we don't even like her. The question isn't whether you like me. The question is whether you like the U.S. Constitution and whether or not you love this nation and whether or not you want this place to be safe for everybody or just a few bullies. That's the issue that's really before you. The court cases that I presented to you are eloquent and elegant. And if you wish to read all of them, you can learn a lot about how due process functions. But that's the core issue. I also want to share, since this is, ironically, a praying forum, some Jewish prayers so that you can understand some of how we deal with anti-Semitism and some of how we deal with attacks on our faith, but in a private context. In other words, these are prayers that I would say at home, or prayers that I would say in my synagogue. These are not prayers that are said in a public venue. And among these prayers, in fact, authorities attacked the Jewish community, causing us to change the words in our prayers. One of the prayers which I emailed to you, Mr. Wieringa, I took from the Geniza. A Geniza is a burial place for old prayers. Effectively, when Jewish documents are no longer used, we do not throw them in the trash. We bury them in a Geniza because we consider the words to be holy, and especially if it's the word of God's name. So the prayer that I sent to you that looks like this, you probably can't see it from there, originally used the word Notzrim, Hanotzrim, and this was a prayer against Notzrim, which are Christians. And this is important for you to know that this would come out of Christian conflict with the Christian community, persecution. Certainly everyone here understands there were pogroms, there were crusades. I hope there's no one who doesn't know that. And certainly everyone knows there was a Nazi Holocaust, which is the sum total of Christian anti-Semitism. So that's how prayers like this get written, from people addressing those problems. Now, we were forced to change the words. We did change the words. We moved from calling it Christians to calling it slanderers or libelous, people who are libelous or persons who engage in some type of blasphemy. I'm going to switch from those prayers to a positive prayer because I do want to, at the end of the day, bring this back to a place where I hope we can share something together that's positive, which is about creating safe space for all of us, including me. So I'm going to share a different prayer, which is called Raphaelino. Raphaelino Adonai v'nei Rapha, v'hosheinu v'ni v'shea, ki tehilatenu ata. Heal us, O God, and we shall be healed. Deliver us, and we will be saved, because you are our prayer. In the work that Rabbi Lazaron did for his lifetime, he tried to have people understand, and as the title of his book says, what is our common ground? Our common ground will not be in the theological details, I can assure you. Our common ground will be in the broad sweep and the constitutional provisions that provide protections to make sure that when one person says, I don't want this in the public space, that the group that has the power says, okay, we get it, we understand it, and we're going to support that because we can do that in private where it's appropriate, and we won't force it in public. In closing, what I'm asking for is a revocation of the order because it's illegal, a public apology because you've hurt me, and financial payment for damages. Because what we also learned from the Torah, which the Jews gave the world, when we hurt people, we don't cut off their arm in payment. We do financial restitution. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Crystal Morgan, Special Legal Counsel. Just to back up to put this into some procedural context, on October 2nd, 2024, the township informed my office that township staff felt threatened by Ms. Plafkin, and her presence at township buildings, and requested that a no trespass order be issued. Prior to October 2nd, the township had received voluminous correspondence from Ms. Plafkin dating back to May 6, 2020. These documents are summarized in the November 8, 2024 legal memorandum that's been provided to the board members, but it included correspondence from Ms. Plafkin threatening litigation against various individuals, accusing individuals of intentional fraud, alleging collusion with the sheriff's and prosecutor's office, correspondence to the Chief Justice of the Michigan Supreme Court alleging fraud and corruption by Judge Mulder of the 58th District Court, allegations against the Michigan Attorney General's Office, Ottawa County Law Enforcement, a petition to the United States Supreme Court alleging malicious prosecution and violation of civil rights by the state of Michigan and others, damages against requests for damages against various individuals, a letter requesting damages of $1.3 million against her condominium association for harassment and other allegations. Additional allegations against the Ottawa County Law Enforcement, allegations of harassment, allegations of illegal arrest warrants authorized by the Sheriff's Office and ratified by various Ottawa County judges, a declaration to Judge Trusock of the 17th Circuit Court with various allegations against county sheriff, allegations of collusion between the sheriff and the Ottawa County Prosecutor's Office, allegations against the Ada Township Board, Hudsonville City Council members, a criminal complaint submitted by Ms. Plafkin to the Michigan Attorney General's Office alleging harassment by the City of Hudsonville Mayor, correspondence to Georgetown Township, accusing individuals of harassment, a letter referencing complaints and correspondence, including a complaint for sexual harassment, various allegations regarding some of the comments that she made today under the three categories that she described, and accusations against township staff of harassment, anti-Semitic bias, demand of reparations, accusations against Supervisor Wieringa of harming and degrading her, and finally, in an October 2, 2024 email addressed to Supervisor Wieringa, Township board members, and others, reading rapist in all capital letters. On October 11, 2024, the township sent a written no trespass order to Ms. Plafkin. The no trespass order stated that it was not intended to interfere with her constitutional rights. It was intended to allow her to still communicate with the township through means such as email, telephone. She has the ability under the no contact order to attend public meetings, participate in public meetings, and an exception was also made to allow her to exercise her rights to vote. And all of that was conveyed to her in correspondence that she received as evidenced by her appeal here tonight. The law does not require that the township afford an individual in this circumstance the opportunity to appeal, but the township did offer that as a courtesy to Ms. Plafkin to give her the opportunity to address the board and the limited no contact order, no trespass order. Ms. Plafkin was advised of her right to appear before this board, participate in an appeal, be represented by legal counsel if she wished, present witnesses on her behalf if she wished. She did submit, I received 2 documents from Ms. Plafkin, which I would ask that those be received into the record this evening.
There.
Yes, the transmittal emails that Ms. Plafkin sent, she sent original versions and then followed up with corrected versions. I would ask that the record reflect that the corrected versions, her second version, if you will, are the copies that are admitted into the record.
They are received into the record.
Don't wish for that to be in the record. Okay. I just confirmed with Ms. Plafkin that the correspondence to Supervisor Wieringa with the prayer that she referenced earlier was not sent to my office, and she does not wish for that to be included in the record this evening. For some additional context, Ms. Plafkin has appeared at various public meetings, including a June 4, 2024 meeting of the Grand Rapids City Commission, where she expressed some grievances with the probate court and the city of Grand Rapids city attorney, I believe, and indicated that when she was at the probate court to conduct some business where certainly a certain level of decorum is expected, that the court clerks called 3 uniformed sheriff's deputies to respond to her. I raise that only because the township's action in this matter in issuing this limited no trespass order was a viewpoint neutral decision that was not in any way directed at her religious practices or aimed at any religious exercise. The township viewed Ms. Plafkin's correspondence, especially the most recent correspondence with accusations of rapists, as presenting a clear and present danger of disruption or disorder to the township's business. So it was an attempt to narrowly tailor a no trespass order to allow Ms. Plafkin to still engage with the township, correspond with the township, present her comments to the township and participate, but also to protect the township and to address the disruption of its activities and functions. With that, the documents that are summarized in the November 8, 2024 memorandum are on file with the township. I'd also ask that those be received into the record in this matter.
They are received. Yep.
And so Ms. Plafkin has appealed the order. It is now before the board to determine whether to affirm the no trespass order, to modify it in some way, to terminate it. I would suggest that if the township does act to keep the existing or a modified no trespass order in place for a period of time, that it does make clear that that would still afford her the opportunity to exercise her voting rights, which has been made available to her in the past. We would certainly include that and any other exceptions in a written notification to her following the meeting. Any questions?
Yeah, any questions, Ms. Morgan? No?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think, yes, I think I'm going to treat this, civilly in terms of procedure. There's not hard and fast rules, but it's typical in a court of law that a petitioner such as yourself would have an opportunity for a rebuttal. typically that rebuttal is limited to rebutting what you've heard from Ms. Morgan as opposed to reiterating what you've already stated, but I'd like to afford you that opportunity. Mhm.
It is to what I just heard, because one of the issues is this issue of threatening behavior. I think that that is an improper allegation unless you want to back it up with actual specific facts. So saying to somebody, I think that that cross should be taken down from the senior center, for a Christian who wants that cross up, they view that as threatening. And so then they call the police, and the police participate in saying, oh yeah, that's terrible behavior. It's not threatening behavior. It's me exercising my rights. So one issue I would say is, well, one is to be clear about what are your specific allegations regarding so-called threatening behavior. Two is, I think before this presentation occurred, it would have been great to have, I had not received everything that was just shared. So that was a concern. In other words, I might have prepared differently if I had read everything that was just shared orally. But I would say the core issue has to do with this issue of actual threat. And I think we should dwell there. So are we going to unpack that a little bit further?
Are we going to unpack what specifically?
Meaning, if she's saying she received a plethora of emails. I remember 2 months ago when I asked for documents related to her allegation, she said, well, you'll have to provide those, or she didn't, and correct me if I'm wrong, she did not provide those. What I'm saying is it needs to be specific. It's not okay to just say somebody did something threatening, or even the presentation she brought up about the probate court down in Kent County. She doesn't know what preceded it. So her presentation is, oh, this is a really threatening person, instead of looking at, well, let's unpack the facts and in chronological order, because that's what's critical. Just like the conflict with this body or this, the township, the conflict started after I raised issues with the senior center. So if we're not specific and we don't have a specific timeline, then what are we doing? So I'm bringing it back to her. The onus is on her to present the evidence.
So what I'd say is there was an initial finding, right, and decision made by the township. This is an appeal at this point. The burden on appeal now is you would wish to persuade us to change the decision that's been made. That burden lies with you, and that's why you're being given the opportunity to present whatever evidence you could have brought, witnesses and the like. Well, this is your chance. I mean, this is your opportunity, so I want to make sure you have that opportunity.
Well, I guess what I'll say is she doesn't have evidence of threatening behavior. What she has is a litany of all the attempts that I've made to defend myself over time, and just how much. Actually, one thing I didn't state when I was up here, was that this is part of a continuous course of problems that I've had. And it does involve Kent and Ottawa counties. And yes, it involves Ada because I was born there and the problem started there. Or I was raised there, not born there. But the point is, the original onus was upon her to present evidence of an actual danger, or in this case, whatever her claims are. She didn't present that to me specifically. You made a decision without that. I wasn't at the original, whatever the hearing was, and I wasn't there when you made that decision. So I don't have her evidence. I can't present it to you. She would have to present it, and then I would respond to that evidence. That's what I'm saying.
I guess what I would say to you is that the decision which was already made included the evidence that was brought to the attention of the township, and you would say, I disagree with that. That's not accurate, and you're here to appeal that.
I'm saying it wasn't presented to me.
And my question to you is, everything that Ms. Morgan just brought forward were your own writings, meaning you had possession as the author of those writings to know what that evidence was. There's no reason to provide you with something that you originated.
I have no way to know which among these correspondences she interpreted as either dangerous or harmful or threatening. In other words, if she's saying, I received this on such a date and it's, quote, threatening, it's up to her to present it. If this were an actual court of law, she would have had to enter that into evidence, and then I'd be allowed to address that specific email as a piece of evidence. Generalized statements, that's not how you do a court case. You have to have specific evidence.
Yeah. And so the evidence has been submitted as part of the record. We just received it this evening. You've originally provided it to the township. Excuse me, address the board, please. Please address the board.
Okay. She did not, I'm not going to keep repeating myself. It's frustrating.
Yeah.
It's pointless. You're not hearing the point. She
Okay.
did not present that evidence.
So, for example, when I receive an email from you that says I'm a rapist and I've never met you, and you've copied any number of public officials on it, that's not in some way, shape, or form threatening to me?
Yeah,
That's not evidence?
Do you have the email?
Do I have the email? I do have the email.
Great, bring it out.
I don't need to bring it out. This is not the time and place for it. I've got it with me, and it's part of the record.
Okay, what I'm saying is, whatever procedure you guys had originally was not done. I was not included. I was not told, hey, we're about to issue a no trespass order based on whatever the emails are. Let's have a conversation about A, B, and C.
I mean, here's the email, not that.
Okay. And therefore, so let's talk about this email. What specifically is threatening about this email?
I'm not going to sit and debate with you over
yes, you
determination.
are.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
You made a claim, and you have.
We are an appellate body at this point. We sit on an appeal.
Right. So here's
This is not the trial of your case,
Right.
okay? The decision's been made. At this point, we are hearing each of your points on appeal.
Okay.
You've made your case. She's made hers. You're now rebutting. And then we deliberate and we decide. That's how this works. This is not the time to try or retry the situation.
Okay. Well, let's just say.
You rest? All right. Okay. At this point, we're going to close that portion of the appeal. And at this time, then, sitting as one body, each of you has the opportunity to deliberate.
Jim,
Make
motion to close?
motion to close the public hearing.
So move.
Support. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, the public hearing is closed. Thank you. Okay, so before we make any new motion, I just want to make the comment that you have the opportunity to deliberate. We do this openly. We're in a public meeting. You don't have to deliberate, but you do have to ultimately make a decision whether to deny or to overturn the decision. I'm sorry, to deny the appeal, in which case you've upheld the decision made by the township, or to agree with her appeal and accept it. All right? So anyone wish to make comments in that regard before we would make a decision?
Just one question.
Yes.
Is there a termination of the appeal, or is it until we decide to release the trespass order? Is there a time frame on trespass order now or not?
When it was initially issued, it was issued for 2 years.
Okay.
And it remains in effect during the pendency of this appeal. The township board can adjust that time period. That the 2 years is not set in stone. That was just what the township had determined was reasonable at the outset.
When did that time start?
I think in
October 11th
Okay.
of 2024.
Okay.
And I would say along those lines, I would have been open to considering were the appeal more based upon a contrite approach. Look, I think I was in the wrong. I think that my behavior toward this body and other bodies and other public officials and employees of ours in the township was uncalled for, and it's my determination to approach your public buildings in a different manner and to act in a different manner. I might have been here to consider whether 2 years was too long. But not hearing that, I don't see any basis upon which to change what has been issued. And in fact, if it's still the case 2 years from now that we're being threatened in various ways, that it might even continue from there. But what I know from the investigation that was done is that the points that were made this evening, of which she's making her grievance, are not at all connected to the no trespass order that was issued. It was not because she had made a statement about a cross or about wanting to be a vendor at the senior center. It had everything to do with her behavior, both written and verbal, and interactions, whether it be with Ms. Haverdink, whether it be with this body, through email or otherwise. I'm sorry, but you don't have the right to, at this. No, you don't. No, you don't. We're closed. No, I'm sorry. We're closed. All right? That appeal is closed. No, this is deliberation. Thank you. So what the decision was premised upon was not in any way, shape, or form connected with her faith. Okay, at no point in time was that nexus made at all. And at no point in time, even in the communications that I received and that maybe many of you received and others did, was there even the articulation of what we heard this evening. All right, it was largely premised upon points of dispute or disagreement over, I don't know, our position, things conjured up, allegations conjured up about things that didn't occur, in no way, shape, or form even remotely related to a First Amendment argument, of which we are sensitive, all right? Whether Ms. Plafton wants to believe that or not, all right? There's a sensitivity here in that respect for interfaith. There's respect for that. But whatever her opinion on that, that was not the underpinning of the no trespass order. And we've not received anything in the way of evidence or testimony this evening that would overturn the decision or the premise for that decision, all right? So from my vantage point, I wish we had a situation here where we could restore Ms. Plafkin, but I don't hear anything along those lines that would make Ms. Haverdink at the Senior Center or anybody at the library or even this board comfortable that the threats and the attempts to intimidate, the allegations, and what I might call harassment will somehow cease. That's my opinion. Anyone else? All right. Is there a motion to uphold the no trespass order?
So move.
Support. Further deliberation? All in favor of the motion to uphold the no trespass order, say aye.
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 Any opposed? It is passed. The appeal is concluded.
Thanks, Crystal.
Thank you. Item 10, this is an appeal of a cost of a FOIA request made by Jim Faber. I do not know Mr. Faber, whether he is here this evening. If you are, if you would be so kind as to identify yourself. It's not required of him that he be here, but I just want to make sure he was. We'd acknowledge him. All right. Is there a motion to uphold the original cost of $16 for Mr. Faber's FOIA request, which have been deemed to be 2 increments of 15 minutes apiece at 8 hours per increment?
So moved.
Support.
Support.
Moved and supported. Discussion among the board. All right, hearing none. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion is carried. By the way, just for the record, we treated Mr. Faber's request as we would treat any other resident's request, responding in a timely fashion and following our rules for modest recovery of cost. Item number 11, second reading and adoption of ordinance number 2024-02, the smoking prohibition on township property or within township facilities ordinance. Does any board member wish to make a motion to approve the second reading and adoption of the ordinance?
So move.
And support.
Okay. We did have that prior reading, of course. Any further thoughts since that time? Anything the board wishes to deliberate about? Okay. Hearing no new comments, I'm going to turn to the clerk to take a roll call vote.
Trustee Veldink.
Yes.
Trustee Schwalm.
Yes.
Trustee Grossman.
Yes.
Treasurer DeWitt.
Yes.
Supervisor Wieringa.
Yes.
And clerk is a yes.
Okay, thank you. Item 12, the Van Heidsma drain resolution. I see we've got Mr. Bush here this evening. Joe, would you be willing to come and address the board on this? Welcome. Good to have you.
Before you guys got the memo for the drain. This resolution is because it's overseeding my drain maintenance for drain code. So the drain code says 5,000 per mile per year for drain. The amount of maintenance required for the Van Heidsma drain goes over that a little bit. The resolution before you is to make attorney, and I have to put that to a board, and I'm just looking for your support on that resolution. There is currently, we have $18,200 in that drain account currently. So I have more in the drain account from a previous project we had with contingency. But according to drain code, I have to get a resolution passed to over exceed the 5,000 per mile per year per drain. So that's why before you, the resolution is there. And it's all written in there about the 5,000 per mile per drain.
Yep.
Per year. So that's all it is. It's a general maintenance. The reason it's a little more costly than most, because we have to haul all the materials out. If anybody's familiar with this drain, it's behind, and I'm forgetting the golf course now,
Glen Eagle.
An Eagle, yes, it's my backside, so off of 14. So we did a project in there a few years back, and there is contingency in there to clean it, but it's all full of cattails and invasive species, Phragmites, so we got to truck it off-site. But there is money in there.
Trying to picture that in relation to like 8th Avenue. Where does that piece right there sit?
Well, you got 14th.
Yeah.
14th, Port Sheldon, south of Port Sheldon.
Got it. Got it. Because I'm trying. That was my great grandpa's farm. I'm trying to picture where that was if I.
And it looks a lot
Flooded.
different today than the golf course because a lot of it's got homes on it. But it's on the backside. It'll be on the south side of Eagle Ridge or Eagle Crest.
Yeah.
So
The fire station's on 14th Avenue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. No.
Right off
My
14th.
parents lived on 14th, but that was the farm.
and the drain's a lot longer, but this is the section highlighted that was in the map that you guys were sent. That's the section we're cleaning.
Yep. Yep.
So currently I got enough money to cover the cost of cleaning. I just need the resolution from the township to say I can overspend 5,000 per mile per year per drain.
Yeah.
So I have all the golf balls to sell.
We get a lot of your constituents are, calling regarding this drain is pretty plugged. That's why we're cleaning it. Not just drove by and thought we'd clean it. Got a lot of complaints in there from the condo units, so.
Thanks for addressing it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what we're here for.
Right. Right.
If you have any more questions.
Right.
I just would add that your explanation was pretty helpful. I'm familiar with drain maintenance and 433 agreements. One of the questions that I had initially, more for the benefit, I think, of just understanding these drain districts and drain maintenance for the benefit of this group, if not everyone understands it, right, is I wanted to more make sure that if a project like this was exceeding the cost per mile, do at some point we need to reevaluate the funding for the drain districts as they're created. Is this becoming a pattern, or is
No,
this
this is drain
unique?
code. Yeah, this is state statute. This is drain code.
Okay.
I can't.
I more was thinking, when you set up the drain district per a new development and you put kind of that initial deposit into the fund, is that covering the maintenance that you need to?
But I'm only allowed to charge for the drain maintenance.
Okay, so it is, that's
Amount.
regulated.
Yep,
I
that's
see.
regulated
Okay.
too.
That's what I was trying to understand is, with a community like ours with significant development, then I suspect, anecdotally, right, the drains get clogged much quicker than, and maybe not, maybe in a farm field blowing over, it gets clogged just as easily as well. But just thinking through, how do we make sure that we are adequately, maintaining these drains with the level of impervious surface in this area?
Right.
Maintaining that flow of stormwater is pretty critical.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And some of that money came from future development in here. So some of that money in the contingency came from those developers.
Okay.
But there's money in there from that.
Good.
But the drain district was set up way, way long time ago because the Van Heights was longer than just going through the golf course. But it just only goes basically about 3 miles long. So that's 15,000. I think the resolution says 17,000 feet. So that's what, yeah. Well, we got 18,000 in the account. So we got money to cover it again. But yeah, I understand where you're coming from too, Kelly. But a lot of the 5,000 per mile, that's just
all regulated. Okay.
that comes from drain code. And I don't come to you guys very often for a resolution. Typically, if it wasn't for hauling all that out, we would have been under the threshold. But since you got to haul all this material off-site, that's where it gets costly. Because you can't just put the spoils right next to the drain, like a typical farm drain or some of the other drains, the other 1,000 that we have. This is just one of about 1,300, so.
Yeah. Wow.
We have a lot of drains.
1,300. Wow.
Any other questions? Kelly brought up some good points. So I love there is some legislation talk about going from drain maintenance of 5,000 per mile to 10. Matter of fact, it's sitting on the governor's desk, past the House and the Senate.
Jump.
What's that?
It'd be a pretty steep jump in one swoop.
It hasn't been up. It hasn't been up in a long time. So the 5,000 doesn't get you very far in today's inflation and the cost of doing business. So.
Well, then maybe I'll get some of my money back from contingencies then.
Right. Well, at least it's in there for future. We can do other drains that the township could,
Right.
help support because this one's covered for the year. This one is.
All
I
right.
will make the comment, your office is very responsive because I have made a couple calls in the last year. You got some good people there. So
We're pretty quick on it.
you are.
Small office,
I know.
but we're on it. We take customer service very seriously. So
Yeah.
I always thank you and your board for your support. That helps.
Yeah.
And your staff. Robert's always been great and Justin. Working with us.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
Appreciate
And you
it.
guys always know how to get a hold of me. John?
No.
Oh, I thought you had a question.
No,
John just
you
wants to
always-
take you out for lunch. That's all he wants.
You always do an excellent
Do
job.
that, right? But anyway, you guys know how to get a hold of me at any time. So.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, there's not been a motion as yet. Let's place the matter before you. So is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Support.
Moved and supported. Any discussion among the board? Clearly, we want to see this proceed.
Yes,
All right,
Okay.
this too is a roll call vote.
Yep. Supervisor Waringa,
Yes.
Trustee Grassman,
yes,
Trustee Schwalm,
Yes.
Treasurer DeWitt,
Yes.
Trustee Veldink,
Yes.
Clerk Kuiper is a yes.
All right, thank you. Next is item 13, the township server replacement. And is there a motion to approve the quote from Fusion IT for the purchase and installation of an updated server?
So move.
And support.
Moved and supported. I'll note that we have a representative of Fusion, maybe two, I'm not sure. Yeah, two here this evening. We had the benefit, Finance Committee of discussion with two of the representatives, one of whom is here. And wanted to at least avail the board of that as well if you wish to inquire of them. So, anybody wish for a general overview or?
Jim, they did such a great job. How about having Mike or speak a little bit? That would be great, and explain why we need this.
Since working with Justin and Rob, maintaining and supporting the network, we've come to find out that, there's been a few neglectful here and there. We had a lot of room to make up. Currently, your server that's running the township is called a Super Micro, which we can't even put a warranty on. Normally, we have warranties that offer SLAs, so just in case a warranty does go down, yes, we are currently backing up your data to industry standards, both on-site and off-site in our data center. However, we cannot get a company to properly replace that hardware parts within 10 or 24 hours per that SLA. So upgrading the township with both a redundant cluster server with data storage in the middle, as well as the library server is currently out of support. It's running server 2012 on, and with it being out of support, it's currently your guys are outside of GovEd compliance. So we have on here both some network upgrades and cabling upgrades to support the new servers, as well as the servers both in the township and in the library.
Touch on, if you would, as you did with us in committee, what you see coming in the future as it relates to the cloud and all, that servers may at some point become obsolete.
Yeah, currently we are seeing applications move into the cloud, obviously, for many reasons, both not having to host data on site, and as we move into the future, we do see that as some point down the road where BSA will probably be within the cloud. Currently, right now, we don't see a timeline set for that, but we do know that it will eventually become in the future, so you won't have to carry such a heavy uplift as the hardware then expires or becomes obsolete. So as soon as I see that come on the timeline from BSA, I will alert, Justin and Rob to it, and that will be part of the roadmap. We currently have a roadmap sitting at about 5 to 7 years as we look at upgrading the rest of the infrastructure. So, and that will be part of it once we see that as part of the roadmap from BSA and other Civic Plus and other applications the township is using.
A couple things you mentioned I thought were important, is you said that this should get us along for about 5 to 7 years.
Correct.
And that you're planning on and that's taking into consideration a 40% growth in our
Yeah,
township.
absolutely. Yeah, we're already recognizing, large growth from the township. So we wanted to make sure that that was a part of these server build-outs.
And you're available immediately upon a phone call.
Absolutely.
And you'll put an engineer on it within an hour.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then you would also be willing to help some of our staff to maybe troubleshoot a little bit.
Yes, currently
particularly Justin because of his background.
Yeah, currently that's our support.
Okay. You also recommended that we purchase rather than lease, that you thought that would be better for us.
Yeah, during, both our scoping of the project, we had many conversations with Rob and Justin. That was not part of the request. Also with federal interest rates being, where they're at right now, we didn't see that as a good option. Also including the BSA, the timeline for it moving to the cloud, so.
And you mentioned also that restoring data shouldn't be a problem, that some of it will be stored off-site, or I was a little confused on that.
Yeah, so currently we have what's called a NAS on-site that's hosting all of your data here on-site, and a redundant, it goes back to our data center within the U.S. Signal data center, which is guarded.
Okay. And you recommend not doing the cloud yet because you felt that it's new, and you used the word clunky.
Well, that was per software application. So we work with a lot of companies that have ERPs, enterprise resource planning applications, and a lot of the cases that we are moving people into these cloud services, we're coming to find out that they are not ready to handle a lot of the services that these different companies are throwing at it. But currently, as it stands, BSA does not have that on their timeline. They have not completely lifted everything into the cloud yet.
But that's maybe something down the road.
Absolutely.
4, 5, 6, 7 years we ought to take a look at, and maybe shift.
Yeah, absolutely. As soon as we see it on the timeline, that'll become part of the conversation.
I was very impressed. They were real professional. Comment was made that should we consider going online and trying to get our own equipment? I would not think that would be practical. But I'd like to address it.
Yeah, currently right now we're migrating a lot of the software to be able to spec the internals of a server would be very difficult for any of you guys to do. Maybe Gary might be able to do it. But again, this is something that you have to know the network infrastructure, and our engineers and our field techs who have been working within the township and the library, they understand exactly what you guys need. So.
I think it was mentioned Dan did a very good job.
He did.
But this brought us to a whole new level.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Just for example, currently your ShoreTel, your phone system, that server does not have any more resources to allocate towards any upgrades. It is left at 2 versions behind, and currently we're running into some issues that this would alleviate. However, with Dan, we seen him make a few decisions back in the day that were questionable, that has already cost money to fix some of the decisions that he made back in there. But he did a great job.
There's also mention of a disaster recovery program maybe being needed. I don't expect you to deliberate with us about that now, but I would ask you to follow up, obviously, with Justin and Rob, and if you think there's something there that we need to be addressing, that you would discuss that with them. So.
Absolutely. Currently, we have a disaster recovery plan set in place for all clients. I can share that paperwork, and we can go over that with them.
What else?
Will this system connect all our fire department buildings and the township and everything too?
Yes, all the buildings that are utilizing software and applications on the server.
No.
Is BSA's lack of cloud presence, is that unique to BSA? It feels like it's kind of behind the times as compared to private industry.
I want to answer. I would say yes, it is behind.
Yeah.
Especially when every municipality in the state is on it.
Yeah.
And there continues to be word that it's coming, and it's coming, at a reasonable price. And when that comes, it'll be nice because people can get to the application when they're out on the road, out in the township, versus having to come here. So,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I mean, even from a simple perspective, code enforcement officer, utility, and you need to pull up some information as it relates to the property. I mean, right, it's kind of your handheld assessing card right there. It feels like this should already be a thing.
Yeah. To alleviate a little bit of that feeling, this current solution that we're putting in place will improve the DPW and those connecting remotely greatly.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I have a question from you guys. So all our GPSing that the DPW is doing now, does that get loaded into this computer system too? So that would be saved off-site also? Yeah? Okay. I figured you'd be on it, Justin. I just had to ask.
Okay. Anything else? All right. The motion is before you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 14, the 2025 subdivision resurfacing estimates. Is there a motion to approve the estimate proposed by the Ottawa County Road Commission and recommended by Utilities Committee?
So moved.
Support.
Supported. All right. This is an annual decision that we make. It does fall pretty much every January, sometimes sooner. And obviously is one of the things that we both spend the most money on in comparison to many other items that we engage in. And it's a lot of money every year. And it's one of the things I think as a resident, our residents count on, is that non-primary roads, which are largely fall to us, right, are being taken care of. And I appreciate and I applaud the Utilities Committee over the past 3 years in this board with using a lot of the COVID money, or we call it as such, but they had a fancy name for it, but the money we received related to COVID toward catching up on some roads that we were behind. And so we felt like we did accomplish a good deal of that catch-up, but I'd like to maybe turn to Gary from Utilities in terms of, all right, bringing this back to maybe what used to be and saying, okay, we've made some good strides to catch up. Now we're going to try to maintain going forward. How did we come to what we've proposed to the board here today?
Well, the county comes with a list to us, and they mark them. And I still feel it's good that we do sections, as you can see on the map, around Hidden Lakes and over there by Pheasant Run, those different areas. It gives us an efficiency. We get better bids for roads because we're doing sections instead of just spot fixing. I think that's helped a lot in getting more roads done for the dollar. This year, we're not doing as many roads, but we do have some sidewalks that we had approved last year that we're going to pay for out of this year's fund. So the one on 36th Avenue was one. What was the other one? We did another one that week.
48th, right?
Yeah, 48th. So there's some money coming out of that fund this year for sidewalks that are getting put in too. So it's more of a balance this year between roads and sidewalks. But I think we're doing a pretty good job of getting roads caught up. I think the bad thing is the lists came out, and I went over as many as I could myself, but the snow came a little early, so it's kind of hard to see which ones were bad. So I was trying to do it from memory because I ride around the township quite a bit. And I think these ones were the worst because I do remember some of these were bad. So I feel like we may have to address how the county determines what's really bad. There's a couple that said were poor, and I'm like, No, I've been on those roads. They weren't that bad, so.
Okay, yeah, this list has, a lot of them say that they're poor.
They are, but I actually own property on a couple of them. I'm like, they're not that bad, so, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think we got a good list this year, and we'll see what next year brings. Go from there. So, and I will say up front, me and Justin have been working on the county about doing Parsons. And Parsons is a county road between 14th and 8th Avenue, and that road is bad. And I still believe that road was put on the list about 3-4 years ago, and it was going to be done, and it's just disappeared. And so Justin almost made some emails to the Ottawa County Road Commission, and they talked about maybe doing chips and fines on that thing, didn't they? 26? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Still not soon enough, but we do talk to the county, and Justin's got a pretty good direct line there, which helps with some of the other roads too that we think that they should do themselves. So.
Good.
So are we in fact caught all the way up then? It's hard to not notice that most of the roads listed on here are from 2005, 6, 7, and then all of a sudden there's a neighborhood, which I happen to live in, which is 10 years newer than most of what you're resurfacing. And I'm just wondering, are we caught all the way up and now we're like
We're
going
never
back
caught up.
through
We're
the
never
cycle?
caught up.
Because all of these are listed as poor except for that neighborhood right in the middle. We're all, listed as fair for the most part. So I have to believe there's a neighborhood with worse roads than mine that probably should bump up on the list. So I just don't know how it's determined.
Like I said, I did go down quite a few, but the weather, we got the snow came, and this list came right about then. So hopefully next year, I'll take this list and have time through the summer when there's decent weather to go down the roads. It's just, it got late. I mean, the county didn't give us this list until November, and then they wanted a decision right away. So it just didn't work out. But I do know, like the ones around Hidden Lakes, those are bad. I mean, I've been on those. Those are bad. So that area needed to be attended to, and I think next year we'll do a little more traveling to check. It's just got a little late this year.
So just because I'm new, just help me understand, right? When we approve this list, are we approving a dollar value or very specifically the roads that are listed on here?
We try to get as close to the dollar amount as we can too.
I only wonder because, right, once you start doing this work in the summer, let's say you are able to get around and you say, you know what, that chunk of roads right in that Rolling Hills neighborhood, that was going to total X amount, but I've been driving around and I found a different neighborhood that needs it more. Do we have the ability to switch?
We can do whatever we want on these roads. It's just the county spends more time at it than what we do because that's what they do, and they give us the assessment. And then we just try to pick from this huge list, which came to a total of $6 million, and we had $2 million to spend. And so you start picking and you try to figure out which ones you can get the dollar for. Like that little section right there, like, well, why'd you add that one? Well, that little section needed to be done, and that brought us up to our $2 million, So, and we'll see once if, right now I think we figured it was like $1.9 million. In the past year, sometimes they'll come back and the bids will actually come in at like 1.7. We may pick roads and then we'll say, okay, well, let's go back to this list. Can we find $200,000 of roads to get back to the 1.9 so that we spend that 1.9 on roads? Because that's what we budgeted. And so then we may pick a spot that's $200,000 and try to bring that number back up to the 1.9. That way we are using that money to fix as many roads as we can. The last 2 years, we've been fortunate because we've had bids come in $500,000 cheaper than estimate. Now you can spend another $500,000 on more roads. So those are all good things. So the process isn't quite done yet. Bids will probably go out next month.
Yeah, but I do want to stress, these roads will be locked in because when they quote them, we will have the opportunity to add more roads if the bids come in lower. But these, we won't be able to pull roads out.
No.
After the bids.
Right.
So Kelly's question of pulling roads out, no, changing them.
But we've had success the last 2 years of adding more streets because bids have come in under
budget.
He generally bids pretty conservative, so it usually ends up under this amount.
And then can you help me understand, when we're bidding it out, what is detailed in that bid? So I only can think now, if, my neighborhood's going to be done, I can think through all of the catch basins that have completely sunk and are now, causing other problems. Do they go through and actually raise,
We raise the castings on all the roads. We put new castings in because we're tiring them out anyways. There's a difference between, repaving and reconstruction.
Sure.
Reconstruction is we take all the tar out, we put a brand new road surface in. Repaving is just putting our layer over top what's there, but we do raise the castings.
Okay.
I think we replace the castings if we surface, or if we rebuild, and if we just overcoat, then we just raise the castings and put them in the right level.
And what's the life cycle on the repaving process?
Depends on how many Amazon trucks you have go up and down that thing. It's just quit calling Amazon. You don't have all the trucks. You don't have all the wear and tear. I think it's 7 to 10 years.
That's what I thought.
That's what I'm thinking.
And it's interesting, we've been on, over the years, a 15-year, kind of evolved more to a 20-year cycle to try to get around to all these roads. So there was a system, there's a method to the madness. As inflation has gone up and we've kind of held firm to our millage rate and so on, that number, as you say, there's never quite enough to do everything you might want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But the ambition, the aim was always to try to every 15 to 20 years to have covered, and recovered these roads.
Yeah, I think that specifically is why then I question having roads that are only listed as 9 and 10 years old on the list, right? If everybody else has to wait 15 to 20 years for their cycle to come back through, how did, a neighborhood with only 9-year-old roads get on the list then?
Yeah. You're determined to get in trouble with your neighbors, aren't you?
Oh, I don't want to get.
No, it's refreshing, Kelly, to have, to have that perspective and not think just about
We do not do the miles of roads that we did when we first started. I mean, we've slowly gotten fewer roads done in the last 4 years than we did when we first started.
Really? I would say the opposite, Gary.
No, because when fuel goes up, so does tar.
Yeah.
So when gas is $2 a gallon, when we first started this in 2020, fuel was cheap. We got a ton of roads done that first year. But as fuel goes up, tar goes up, and so did labor costs. We got more roads done in 2020 mile-wise than we did last year for the buck.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a big, but it does make a difference.
Mm-hmm. To your point then, Kelly, and sometimes this discussion, in fact, it seems every time this discussion is had something along these lines, we're told then, you know what, we're at the point where contracts are being made, schedules are being set, and so on. So to say, and I'm asking you, Gary, then, if, to Kelly's point, if you go, yeah, all right, maybe yours are not, how about if we do this other neighborhood over here? It puts us behind the 8 ball in terms of getting locked in with them to make sure that they get their contracts and get these on the schedule if we don't decide it by a certain date.
Well, the contracts, they'll bid this probably the next few weeks. That'll be the first round. And then we'll see where the numbers come in. So let's say, like I say, number comes in 200 grand less. We can find a section. Well, sometimes we've had it already where, was it last year when they called us and said, we kind of made a mistake. If we'd run this road all the way through for this amount of money, we could save you a lot of money in the future. So then they called and we had the money in the budget. So then we ran that road straight through. I think it was sandstone, wasn't it? It was one of those roads they said we should do this while we're here anyways. And the contractor was very reasonable because he had his equipment there, right? Mm-hmm. So that happens. And hopefully, if we come under bid, we can find a couple roads that need to be known close to the neighbors we're doing, and we'll be able to get a decent rate while their equipment's there. So,
Kelly, I was told years ago that the county has a vehicle that they drive on the roads, and it electronically evaluates it. And that's where they come up with much of their decision of whether or not it has to be replaced. So even though the age isn't there, their technology must have showed that it was in pretty bad shape.
They have not drove that car on Parsons.
Gary, I thought the same thing, that was going to be taken care of 2-3 years ago.
I know.
2026 is what you're saying.
2026.
Yeah. Kelly, often that conversation's been had.
Oh, I know, yeah.
We would carve this area and we'd say, well, we're there already. Yeah, but this wasn't bad and this one's bad. How about we're doing this section, and we're doing this section, right? Yeah, it's not really a perfect system.
I think there's so much value in Gary's institutional knowledge, but then there's also kind of the value in new people saying, remind me how we come to
for
these
sure.
Decisions.
For sure. Even when you're done, it's not like you know that you nailed it perfectly because probably is no perfect,
Yeah.
All right, well, we appreciate the work that you guys did on utilities. And any other comments about it? Okay, the motion has been made. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And it is carried. Item 16, this is recording of committee meetings. Is there a motion, first of all, to remove from the table to consider the motion from September 23, 2024 regarding the recording of various meetings?
Make a motion to remove from the table to consider the motion from September 23, 2024 to approve the recording of all committee and board meetings. Post the recordings online as recommended by the Finance Committee.
Is there a second? Move it from the table. Well, I'll second it. All right. Just to place it on the table. I know that we addressed it back in September, but some of you were not part of the board then. So I don't mind starting off with a comment here. My tenure on the board goes back to 2008 as a trustee, so I preceded the time when we recorded any meetings. Somewhere along the way, WCET started to record meetings. John, you'll remember that.
Sure.
And then from there, we installed the cameras that we have in this room. And at some point, WCET no longer brought its cameras to record our meetings here. And we've continued to post the meetings that are held in this room, these township board meetings. So I can remember when we didn't have anything posted online to the point where today we have these meetings regularly online, and I've seen the gamut. My opposition vote in finance, and I was the only one who opposed it out of the three, but the other two who supported it are not here and on the board presently. I mean, their point of view was the one that was expressed tonight in public comment as it relates to transparency, and I don't think it's a misguided notion. I don't somehow go, oh, what are you talking about? I understand that argument. I listen then, I listen now to those appeals. My one view is that from what I've seen historically is that once we introduced cameras, for some reason, for some people, it changed the dynamic in terms of playing to those unseen viewers, of which I think admittedly there are few, but it seemed to change, it just seemed to change people's demeanor, at least certain people, and it became a chance to, at times, to grandstand to a wider audience and the like, and that's not, reason of itself, I suppose, to say, well, we ought not, reconsider the idea, but I have found that what comes through our committees is obviously the means by which things come to this board. And so we in committee can't decide the matters of the township. Those recommendations can be made to this board, and then the board deliberates, of course, here publicly and in front of cameras. And all of those meetings, are, of course, are public as well. So to me, what we do publicize online is what we should, which is the main decision-making body at our decision-making meetings here, our board meetings. I believe from my anecdotal evidence, just in looking at different townships, because I've studied it, townships, villages, cities, or otherwise, we are not out of step. Certainly COVID changed to some degree the level to which people, I should say boards, committees, et cetera, in various townships and cities were online. Now, some of them have stepped back again. Some have continued what they began as a COVID protocol, more or less. But we are not, we are not somehow atypical. I believe that the past couple of years, with the attention that the Ottawa County Board Commission has received, they went to the online meetings for all subcommittees, and that was that was sort of a new thing in a sense, not entirely statewide, but I think locally. And there was a lot of attention, a lot of heat there that I think that they felt needed to be in the public eye because there was such a dichotomy of opinion, right? There was such a opposition, but by and large, people are certainly able to come to our committee meetings, and it's not the only measure of transparency, but they're able to come to any of these committee meetings, and of course, come to this meeting as well as to watch it online. And I don't personally feel that the township is lacking in terms of transparency. It's not the only measure of transparency. There's any number of things at any point in time that people want to access our budget or ask questions about anything relating to the voting process. FOIA requests, I mean, all manner of openness, as we must by law and as we do, because we as residents want that transparency. But I don't think this is the be-all, end-all personally of what it means to be transparent. I think sometimes it has an effect of shaping behavior that quite honestly makes it more difficult to conduct business and have debate because they're either worried about or playing to this unseen audience that statistically hardly exists, but nevertheless plays a bigger part in some people's minds that it makes things stilted, to be honest. So that's my point of view. So
I believe we should tape this meeting, and we have about 30 people that do watch it. Sometimes it'll be 50. We'll have something incredibly controversial, and I think we had one that almost pushed 500. But if we go to the subcommittees, I talked to a gentleman, he was the supervisor of Sparta, and I asked him, and he said, we do our subcommittees. And I said, who else in Kent County? And they said, Ada. And so there's 2 there. But I do think it affects people dramatically as far as being open. How far do we go with this? Now, I think certainly school boards, sure, that should be taped. How far down the road do you go? Do you do the staff meetings? I mean, that's where really the meat and potatoes are if you really want to find out. And I was on consistory. Should we be taping what the deliberations are of the church? Should we be that transparent? And I remember one time I voted that we should cut someone's wages for the church. And those people, we vacationed with them. We were best friends. That ended our friendship because I said, let's stretch that out to 2 years because we're suffering with our budget. How far do you go? I know Google Glasses was real popular. They were talking about having those out in 2016, 2017, where you could just put on some glasses and then from those glasses you could identify people and find out about their background. Suddenly that stopped. But that technology was about to step out. How far do we go? I know Justin, he spends, I think, about 3 hours or so when he takes and puts these on air. I think it's well spent. But do we do this now for our planning commission and every other one of our commissions? Who's going to do it? What kind of time? And what we had before is people would turn around, talk to the audience, and make it very political. It's tough now to get good people that will run for these positions because of the problems involved. People are already inhibited. This one should be taped. I'm not for the other ones being taped. They can attend, but I think we have to decide how far do you want to go with this in our society in general. So I'm not for it.
Kelly, looks like you're about to speak. Yes.
Yeah. I think maybe just for a moment, let's all replace the word transparency with accessibility. I think that we're focusing on transparency kind of as a political scapegoat for the request to tape everything. And I think in its a more simple sense, it's simply about accessibility for all. I've heard a couple of times tonight the language has said, just come in here. And that's not a reality for everybody. I think it's very easy to say that as a group of 6 or 7 or plus you guys that drive our cars and walk in here on our own 2 able-bodied feet. But in terms of simple accessibility, I think it could go a long way, not just for transparency, but to be a good steward of our position and the information and power in which we yield. You know, the alternative to Justin spending a few hours of his time is potentially to put the burden on the resident to say, well, you can FOIA that request for money, and it costs you time. You know, you can call and ask us the details of the meetings because our minutes don't do a good job of including the details of public comment. So for me, I just think that it's kind of, we're saying that the information is there, but yet we're sort of putting the burden on the resident or the constituent to go find the information. And I just like the idea of calling it a stewardship. This position is a stewardship, and I think that we have an obligation to be not just as transparent, but as accessible as possible to all residents. And I think very simply videotaping, I mean, I understand and I hear the concerns about playing to videotapes. I've said always, 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 I will never say anything or make a decision to get reelected. I don't care if you reelect me in 3.5 more years. I'm here to do a job and to do it well. And if people don't like that, they don't like that. But I do think that this is in the best interest, in the sake of accessibility for our residents, even if it causes us a little bit more consternation.
Do we have a cost analysis?
We don't, and that's the only thing that I
think it's very expensive. We'd have to redo, I don't know what the cost and everything else is.
I'd like to look into that. And I'm comfortable if that's something that this board, I mean, if there is not a widespread, you know, attitude of wanting to do it, I'm very comfortable having my lone opinion. But I do think maybe that's worth considering is, I know that there's a very real cost to your time, and I don't want to take advantage of that. But I don't think it's fair to say that Justin's time is more valuable than just saying a resident can go file a FOIA request. You know, that also takes time and money on their part.
Correct.
So I do think that we have to consider that. And I think that as a budget-conscious township, that's important to us, but it also means that usually we can find a way with our funding to get, you know, quality things done for our community. So I wouldn't mind looking into the cost of it, but I understand I may not be the majority opinion, and that's okay. But I wanted to share that.
Thank you. Others of you, anyone
Yeah,
else?
First of all, I don't agree that we're not accessible. We are accessible. You come to a meeting. It's not a big deal. You come to a meeting. We used to have meetings during the day, and we got rid of them during the day. We put them at night so that people could come to the meetings. So that's what we did, made them more accessible. I also think that committee work is just what it is. It's committee work. The decisions for utilities, the roads, we bring that information here, and the board decides on that information. That work in the utility committee is creativity. And I've always found that when you start bringing in cameras and stuff, you squelch creativity, because some people just are not going to speak out with the camera in front of them. They're not going to make their voice known. And they'll come to this meeting and they'll vote, but there's some that aren't going to say anything. And I think that when you have subcommittees like this, that's what they do, the work to put the information together, and we bring it to the board, and the board decides on. There's no decisions made in that committee other than the information that's brought here. And so I don't think we need to do that. Is we are accessible. There's not that many people that have that really care, as long as we do what's right. And I don't think we haven't done anything wrong. So, you know, and the same thing with costs. I'll be right up front. If you're going to do this, that's fine. But then I want cameras pointed at the audience so that we know what they're doing. And I want better cameras going down the hall and in there. And I want better cameras on the parking lot because there's been intimidation issues in the past. People following people out to their cars and poor lighting out there. We've all seen it. And so if we're going to be totally transparent, let's be transparent both ways so everybody knows what's going on. Because there's a lot of things behind the scenes that aren't being talked about and shown either. That's my 2 cents. But I don't believe that our committees need to be recorded. We do record them through minutes. We bring the information that needs to be brought here to be voted on. And I think all committees have done their work.
I do think we need to not say discussion took place. It should say discussion took place about whatever it is you're talking about for whatever meeting it is. So I think the minutes need to be a little bit more expanded, and that would maybe be helpful.
Okay. And I could agree with being more broader minutes. I have no problem with that.
Yep.
That's been my whole thing too. I agree with what Gary said. And in fact, I've got some information from the MTA legal counsel, stuff like that. What we're doing on the subcommittees is as legal as we can get. What we're doing, the bare minimum. But I think, like Amy said, I think we could be just a little bit better on, it doesn't have to be as much as the zoning board's doing everything word for word and stuff like that. But I think just to enhance maybe, or if that's the right word, to get a little more information, just enough so that we can tell what's going on, so that the cameras will not have to be on us, so we can have a decent discussion. That would be
the point of common ground there. It's not before us tonight, but that is a point of common ground. It sounds like relates to minutes and sort of striking a balance, as you described it, between being too verbose but being too cryptic. So I see a lot of nods that way. I don't think there's anything, as I say, that we need to take up because not before us presently, but I'm not even sure that's something that would require, some kind of a motion or vote. That's just more of an admonition directive, and we could provide feedback based on what we see going forward to say, you know what, that's a lot better. That strikes the right, balance or whatever. Or you know what, it's still too cryptic, or it's, you're maybe saying too much. I don't know. So, all right, but fairly before us now. Anybody else wish to address the matter of recording of meetings? And all of you are well stated. Yeah.
I can just mention, I've been in all my life on committees, whether it's school or church or here or whatever. And I'm nervous about when you leave, what are we all on the same page? And so I will play devil's advocate, and I will take an opposite side and really go after people. Because if we get the wrong message out there, and I had that happen a number of times in church, and I would come on pretty strong. And they knew, but if that was being recorded, I would not do that. And I would force people to say it publicly before we'd walk out the door, because it would be something that could really divide our church. So let's just make sure we're all on the same page. I would not do that if I was being recorded. I wouldn't embarrass that person like that. I'd let it go. And the same thing with this. We've had some pretty lively discussions, and there would be people present, but it wasn't something I felt freer and more open. And as I mentioned to you, I lost a friendship. And it was because someone talked afterwards. John, he cut you in half, he did that. Well, this is supposed to be private. And this wasn't one where you had guests involved, but people talk. Well, if you're going to be recorded, it's a whole different environment. And I completely agree with Gary. Everything changes. And politically, and that's not, and I agree with Kelly, shouldn't be the thing that you look at. But we started out the first time that you were here, and someone came up and the comment was made, let the games begin. That's why I feel there's a big push for this. And it's tough enough to come here, and we're almost volunteering our time, and we're here to serve, and we're not full-time, and these positions were made part-time so that we'd have the professionals to take care of this. But it's up to you. If you folks want to do it, but I'm looking at future boards and how this is going to affect them. How far do we go in our societies? I'll tell you right now, if you talk about school systems, you recorded the staff meetings, it would be 100% different. And you say, well, maybe more positive. But why don't we just go the next step and record the classrooms? I mean, what's that teacher doing in there? Why don't we just have 24/7, all of our people watched all the time? And I've taught online. I've done that stuff. But is that where we want to go? And it may be that way eventually anyway.
Kelly, final word? I can tell you want
Yeah,
to say something.
I just wanted to say, I don't necessarily disagree with all of the points that you guys are making. I very much get it. And in the spirit of being a devil's advocate, right, just trying to think through all these scenarios. So I fully get all of your points. Just the final point that I want to make, right, is that, if the average resident, logged on and watched this township board meeting without asking some of the questions of how do we come up with, the resurfacing streets? How do we, come up with these things? How did we come up with this, or what led to this decision? The meeting reads as if almost you walked in halfway through a meeting and you're not sure how you got there. Like, that's my only concern, is that because so much work happens at the committee, the board meeting itself, the thing that's taped and available to residents, it doesn't provide a lot of background information that maybe the 30 people who watch would be interested in. I mean, I recognize that there's a small number. I'm not trying to suggest that this is going to be mass waves of interest in our township proceedings. Just a thought, right? Just the other side of it.
Mm-hmm. Good points, everyone. Procedurally, what we did is we removed it and placed it on the table, right? It's on the table simply for consideration. Now, there's been no motion to approve it at this point. If there is such a motion, it would need a second, obviously. If you prefer the status quo, then no motion is necessary. That is, it will continue, right? So those who want to see a change would be those who would initiate a motion. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so with that, I guess I would call for, is there anyone who would like to make a motion to approve the recording of Planning Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals committee meetings?
I will make that motion.
Is there a second? Okay, hearing none. The status quo will continue. The subject of minutes which came up, we can discuss further. I think that's a good point of common ground. And thank you to everyone for their perspective on this. Appreciate it. Item 16, second public comment period. You may have 3 minutes to address the board. Yes.
Yes, I'm still Marcia Plafkin-Hurwitz. I'm going to change this. I'm not going to try to appeal, but instead I'm going to raise an issue of staff behavior regarding Justin. And I want to request all emails that preceded the email you used as evidence against me, because I left voicemail, email, and the day that I showed up was after Justin had stonewalled me. So I want you to produce those emails, send those to me, and then we'll have a conversation about that, because I'm formally submitting a complaint against Justin for bullying me through stonewalling. And by the way, I quit the senior center 2 years ago after the cross incident. I didn't go back. There was no communication. When I tried to go back, they said, oh, you have to go to Justin. And then Justin began the bullying and stonewalling. So that's how we got here. So I expect you to produce those emails. I expect us to do a proper timeline about that. And again, this is not about an appeal. If I go to any other body, it certainly won't be this one. Now, are you obligated to save the emails? You're not going to answer that, but I believe there's a duty to keep the emails that are sent to the public office, not to throw them away or hide them.
Okay, anyone else? Welcome.
Joseph Parnell McCarter, 6408 Renwood, Georgetown Township. We are making good progress in the Save the Campbell effort. 4 town boards in the county have passed a resolution to save the Campbell, 3 of them by unanimous votes, and we have good reason to believe more town boards will do the same. Most area political leaders representing us in Lansing and Washington have indicated their concern with the 2025 closure and demolition of the Campbell. 2, Ottawa County Board members have expressed their intentions to put this issue on the county board agenda and to seek to save the Campbell. Many hundreds of county citizens have signed petitions. President Trump and his energy czar Doug Burgum are promoting a new federal policy of keeping clean coal plants open and utilizing carbon capture, which means federal money may soon be available for this route. One of the main reasons for this support is because the preeminent expert on our regional grid operator MISO, has advised to delay such fossil fuel plant closures in order to avoid a dangerous grid situation. They realize, too, we have very viable legal options, including the county joining Wolverine Power in its successful litigation with Consumers Energy. 2, there are 79 counties and townships suing MPSC for its abuse of power on the related issue of overthrowing local zoning rules in a vain effort to replace reliable fossil fuel plants with what MISO classifies as unreliable solar and wind. Michigan law allows and recognizes the need to delay closures when grid problems would result. Furthermore, Michigan law gives municipalities legal powers over electric when they choose to exercise them, as exemplified by how Zeeland, decades ago, stopped using Consumers Energy and had its own electric co-op manage it. Now Zeeland residential customers pay 58% less than Consumers Energy customers, and one does not hear either liberals or conservatives in Zeeland, Holland, or Grand Haven begging to lose local control. The sad reality is that Consumers Energy and MPSC are treating Ottawa County badly. The MPSC is handsomely rewarding Consumers Energy executives and investors with lots of money to do their bidding in rapidly closing fossil fuel plants at the expense of us. The MPSC wants gas as well as coal plants rapidly closed. The Detroit Free Press in 2023 ran an excellent article that showed how consumers and DTE have a corrupting relationship with the MPSC. This is not a good situation. Time is critical because the Campbell closure is scheduled for May 2025. It is important that our county present a united voice on this issue, and so I would ask this board to pass the amended resolution to save the Campbell. Thanks for your consideration of this request.
Mr. McCarter, no one can fit in the amount of content in 3 minutes like you can. You do really well.
Hi, Board. Good evening again. Kelly, I just want to commend you for going against the status quo, and I think a lot of us, have gotten involved. I know for myself, got involved to change the status quo. One of the things that I want to just mention, John, is that staff meetings are way, way different than a public board that is in the public eye. I mean, that's what you ran for, is to represent the public, and these are public meetings. Staff meetings, those folks didn't run to be in the public eye, you did. So with all due respect, just something to keep in mind. Two different things, not even the same thing. So, and accessibility, I think is an accurate term. Just having accessibility, I know for myself, my board meetings are the same night as yours typically. The only reason I'm here is because my board meeting was postponed to next week. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. But being able to go back and take a look at the video, if there's something that is important to me that I'd like to see, I would like to be able to have the accessibility to do that because of that conflict of meeting. So, and that is why I'm for that. Thank you.
You? Anyone else? Pete Plowman, Precinct 13.
Yeah, but
All right.
I was just thinking of the lady that was sitting here and the whole legal process that went through. And the only thing that came to my mind is I was just wondering, I mean, she totally believes in what she thinks and so on and so forth. You believe in what you think. Have you, any of you guys ever just sat down and had coffee with her and got to know her? Have you ever done that? Because now we're doing tit for tat. maybe you should do that. But you're past that, so it really doesn't matter. I was just wondering. On accessibility, Jim, will you please tell Kelly Kuiper that thank you for standing up and expressing the opinion that seems like common sense, because you just answered the question. Less accessibility, transparency is better than more. So I guess that's the way we roll in Georgetown. The other side of the coin is that on your network build out that you're doing, your forklift upgrade, as a governmental agency, you can buy that hardware, that $150,000 of hardware from Dell at discounted prices for government, probably saving $25,000, $30,000. You could have done that, but you didn't. So, and use Fusion IT for what they're best at. Their value proposition is service and technical support, but you elected not to do that. So, I mean, we could have saved maybe $25,000, $30,000. But anyway, I appreciate you at least voicing your opinion. Oh, I wanted to also, Jim, if you could tell Amy Grassman that I appreciate her coming up to me in a committee meeting, and she expressed that, yeah, our notes on our meetings are very lacking, and she had expressed to some of the people that take those notes to take more detail, but tell her that hasn't happened yet. So I appreciate it. Thank you, ladies.
All right. Anyone else? Welcome.
Darling Dystra, Hunters Drive, Georgetown. I too thank you, Kelly, for being willing to stand up for your constituents. This is my first time at one of our meetings, to my shame, but I'd like to address your Mr. Schwalm's comment about comparing this to church meetings. That has no relation, no bearing at all to this. Church is different. It has to go according to biblical standards in a specific form. You were all elected, and you are here whether it cost you. The comment was made that, oh, you're hardly making any money. Why did you run? To get a paycheck? Or did you run to represent Georgetown Township residents? Kelly, I really appreciate you standing up. And it came out to me that you were concerned about what we could access. This is a learning process for the public. And admittedly, the public has not been as involved as they should be. But none of you should fear all these meetings being recorded, because there shouldn't be anything to be hidden. So I would say I commend Kelly again. Amy, I appreciate you making the comment that they could be more descriptive. But I would suggest that you all reconsider and think about serving the constituents and not about the paycheck you may or may not deserve. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Harvey Nichols, 7513 Durane Drive. I want you to really consider what Mr. Joe said about the putting in the Georgetown to stop the closing of the Campbell. We are experiencing I'll say a psyop about climate change, that we have to close that for carbon emissions. Well, people don't realize that our world has a carbon cycle. If you want to get rid of carbon dioxide, plant more trees. But what they're doing, they're cutting down acres and acres of trees to put up a solar farm. But they're not considering the amount of energy that's required and the damages done to mine that silicone and all the things that go along with it. Also, the amount of trees that could absorb the carbon dioxide and convert it to oxygen. We cut down those trees that we cut our oxygen. And do you know that trees stop living if the carbon dioxide is too low? There's a finite window. And we've got a beautiful carbon cycle that God made it for us on this world. If we want to just be efficient, cut down the waste, the poisons, toxins going up the stack, but CO2 out in the air, we need it to grow the plants. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Michael Bosch, 3245 Golden Oak Court. I would like to commend Mrs. Kuiper for her exercising common sense and being a true representative to the people that elected her and those who might not have voted for her. I just want to warn you, exercising common sense is going to make you a lone vote. But I appreciate it, and I know our constituents do too. It's a very simple thing to do to record. We just had an elections meeting here last week in this room. The cameras are here. It might take 3 hours to upload. It doesn't take, it's recorded. You click post. It's very simple. There's no cost. But the thing is, I've talked to people about it. They're like, well, why would they not record it? Well, why would you not record it? It's very simple. If you're saying something, you're afraid of being recorded, you probably shouldn't say it. And we have board members who they probably don't even know where they are. Georgetown Joe Biden. This is not the same thing. This is a public meeting. Committee meetings are public meetings. They're not staff meetings. They're not church meetings. They're open to the public. They should be recorded so that people can see it. Make it accessible, like the clerk said. It's a very great point. Not everybody can get here at 8 o'clock on a Monday morning, 8:15. We need to think about people other than ourselves as board members and our friends and families. We need transparency and accessibility. It's a very simple thing. I'm not surprised, disappointed, but I've been there before. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. You're public servants. You shouldn't be afraid to speak and be recorded. And we'll probably just have somebody record it and live stream it on Facebook. So it's going to get recorded. It just doesn't make sense. It's the typical Georgetown method, treating your constituents as mushrooms. Keep them in the dark, and you know what you're going to feed them, which is what you always do. It's sad. It's disgusting. Shame on you. Shame on you. And repeating these lies of somebody's following people to their car. That's a lie. People call themselves Christians on this board, but they don't act like it. It's disgusting. It's very disheartening. I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed. Thanks again, Ms. Kuiper. Mrs. Kuiper.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll close the second public comment period. Item 17, discussion and general information. Looking to my left.
Got nothing. Jim,
Right.
just mention Marilyn Moore passed away, Dale's wife. And they had a very nice ceremony with the kids and so forth. But wonderful person. Dale did a great job while he was here. And also, Joe with his comments, I'd like to bring that up again in our utilities meeting. His revision, I think, is excellent, and I'd like us all to reconsider it. You know, we reflect a little bit of what's going on in California, and they said, trust me, trust me, trust me, and these people are really going through a mess. It's not that we have any power, but at least we're making a statement. And I think one of the things that bothers me most is the fact that there hasn't been a lot of publicity explaining to us what the alternative is and how successful it's going to be. So when people ask us, when they close this plant, where do we stand? I don't know. If you were in charge, wouldn't you have come to the different boards in the area and reassured them, or at least talk with our general staff, or wouldn't you even be getting things out to the news media and say, okay, we're going to be all right because we're going to be able to do it with wind. We're going to be able to do it with solar. That's not happening. That's why I'd like to see us make a statement on this. I'd like to see us support Joe. And I'd like to see 100%. It carries a lot more weight when you have 100% of the board that was set. It's not that we have any power, but you're making a statement. Can you imagine how powerful it would have been over there in California if some of those municipalities, it would have been political nightmare for them holding their positions, but if they'd taken a stand concerning the water, the fires, and so forth, but we're not hearing anything about that either.
They cut all their funding. They cut a lot of funding to,
And also, there was a gentleman that passed away that served, and Gary knew him.
Claude Meppelink. Claude Meppelink was head of our DPW for quite a few years, and he passed away last week.
I did not hear that.
And he's been a great resource even to our DPW now because he's so knowledgeable about the system that was put in already when he started here. So I know Joe Hannenberg has used him as a great asset, but he worked for, I don't know, 26 years, I think Joe said, for the township, something like that. So, yeah, but.
I got a notification from Pam at the senior center asking if there was some cases of fraud going around, saying that she's had a couple people contact her about like a property scam fraud. I know, I said I would look into it, and I haven't had a chance. This was just something I saw this morning, but I remember seeing on Facebook that there is a fraud, right, like forum here. Do you know it, right? There's a fraud forum here at the township on January 23rd. I didn't know if you had heard anything about property scams, calling people up. So I'll look into it, or if you guys know anything. But I did think that was probably an interesting little meeting. I mean, it's really common, right? This fraud and the issues. That's what, January 23rd at 12:30 here at the township. I thought it'd be worth passing along, especially since Pam mentioned that issue.
Anyone else? I think my only other comment would be, I agree with John and Mr. McCarter. I think that the revisions made to the original proposal, if you will, resolution, I think addressed some of the concerns that voted against it, those who voted against it had. And so, unlike John, I would settle for just a majority if need be. Just be great to have unanimous, but I would take even a majority at this point because time is running short. So,
yes.
Anyway, is there a motion to close?
So moved.
Support.
Favor say aye.
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 And the meeting's adjourned.